Our speaker today is Megan White, who will give a talk entitled Hope and Help for Hard Conversations. By learning the hard way, good girl. Megan has been shifting herself from conflict avoidant to conflict courageous for the last 15 years. As a meditator, she sees repeatedly how a little hope and a little help can turn a conflict into an opportunity for learning and deeper intimacy. Joining together with Margaret Garcia, Megan works as a mediator, facilitator, and educator in their business Rehumanize LLC. Rehumanize offers transformative workshops on a range of topics from facilitation, conflict process, consensus to racism, classism, and how to be in respectful self-awareness of the place and cultures of Taos. Welcome, Megan. We're so psyched to have you here with us. Yeah.
I feel like I'm going away so far.
I know, that's the thing about the circle. I kind of liked it a little more tucked in, but everyone got mad at me. They wanted the circle. So we have a circle. I'm happy.
Let's test the microphone first. How is that?
Close as
closer.
There you go.
How about that? Closer to me, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Zoom people. I'm nervous. But it's really sweet to be with this group. It feels so casual and comfortable for me. I really love the way people just pop out things, and Ginny has this just so sweetly warm and friendly yet humble way of leading. It's just a joy, pleasure to be with you all. And it's nice to see some faces from last time I spoke in the summertime. Feels like it's been a long time. I barely remember what I talked about. But fortunately, I use the same title, so that helps. Yeah, I'm just grateful for this place, this community. Thank you. So what we talked about last time, if you were here, I see a couple people who is we got into thinking about what habits and patterns we learned from the past, from our childhood, that we have been working on in our lives to change. And many of you shared very vulnerably, powerful stories of what you have been working on to change. And I want to do that again. And I don't know how it works with the Zoom group to have that interactive type of conversation. So if people speak from the community, do I need to repeat what they say into the mic?
Yes, whoever doesn't have a mic, then the Zoom people can't hear them.
Okay, so if you want to be anonymous and not on a recording, then I won't repeat what you say. But if you're okay with people hearing what you've shared, then I'll just summarize it. Does that sound okay? Okay. So I'm also going to watch the time a little better last time than I did last time. But I should stop at what time? At 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So this time I want to talk a little bit with you all about what we learned growing up about conflict, what was modeled to us in our families, in our schools about conflict. How did we learn to address conflict or face it? Was conflict just normal? For some families, it's normal. Arguments are just part of life and they're dealt with in that way. And for a lot of us, though, I think conflict was scary. We avoided it. We learned to avoid it. And I was thinking about this last night as I was falling asleep, how in my family, I learned to be conflict avoidant by being hit if I did something, right? I'm sure many of you. I was hit if I did something that created a conflict with my dad. I was supposed to be silent and obedient when he told me what to do, what to say, how to behave, right? And if I talked back and kind of tried to argue with him, I would be hit. Did that happen for anyone else? Yeah, or something like that. So we learn sometimes by a felt sense to not create a conflict. We learn to be silent, to obey. And even like I remember my mom, she didn't hit me, but she did whenever she sent a very strong message to not ever speak my wants or needs. Never. If we went to the grocery store, if I asked for something when we were in the grocery store, the rule was do not ask for anything. If I asked for something, she stopped us right there, left the cart wherever it was. We went back home. If my dad was there, she just left me with him. And then she went to the grocery store alone. So not only did I learn to not listen to my wants and not speak them in the grocery store, but in general. And part of this had to do with her own shame of being poor and not being able to buy what I wanted. And it felt so awful to her. And this is my interpretation. We've never really talked about it so frankly. But it's my interpretation that it was so hard to her that she couldn't buy her daughter what she wanted, that she didn't want to hear it. It was too painful to have to say no over and over. And that was not only true for things in the grocery store, it was also true for things like hobbies. If I wanted to take music lessons or soccer or anything that cost money, I learned to stuff it. And so I grew up learning to not think about what I wanted, needed, longed for. Does anyone relate to that? And so it's actually very hard to retrain myself to think about what I want. Think about what I want to create, what I hope for, what I long for. And not only in terms of material things or activities, but primarily and most painfully in relationships. What do I want to co-create with this other person as our relationship? What do I want to create this relationship to be? How do I fall out of the pattern of not even thinking about that? How do I fall out of the pattern of silence and obedience, pleasing, appeasing, and move into a place of really knowing I not only have power to co-create this relationship, I'm doing it by default, even if I don't think about it, right? No matter what, I'm creating this relationship with this person, even if I'm not doing it intentionally. So what am I creating with this person? So I want to hear from you all. Besides what I've shared, what have you learned about conflict? What are your responses if you fear conflict, if you dread it? What happens for you when a hard conversation seems to be on the horizon? Thomas, is that right?
Thomas.
Yeah.
When you heard last time, I remember I shared my experience of toxic masculinity growing up. I was really conditioned to approach all conflict from a masculine perspective. In other words, you fought back.
Yeah.
You drank hard. You know, I grew up in the 40s and 50s, and when attitudes toward women were totally erroneous. And but you were a womanizer. You know, all of these things affected me. And then when I got older, of course, something told me, well, you're not like your dad.
Mm.
You know, you've tried to be out of love for him. You know, you try to be like him, and therein created a lot of conflict that took me many years to work through.
Yeah, I remember you sharing this last time, a version of what you've just shared, and it was so powerful. And to hear that you had this epiphany, oh, I'm not like my dad.
Right.
I can make other choices. I can do this differently. And it was out of some type of loyalty, even a love for your dad, that you were trying to be like him, and suddenly realized I can love my dad without being like him.
Mm-hmm.
That and I wonder, as you've gone, so that first stage, right? That first stage of awareness, that's the first essential part of change, is to realize, oh, this is a habit, pattern, conditioning, and I can do it differently. This is a choice. Without that first level of awareness, change is very difficult, right? And so that's one of the beautiful aspects of things like meditation and other things, right? That inspirational speaking, workshops, all these help us realize, oh, this is how I am, and I have a choice to be different. And they cultivate our internal witness, right? Those kinds of practices. And so you went through that. And then, Thomas, how did you actually create new habits and patterns?
Well, I was gifted with a wife who registered nurse, and I think she got to straighten me out as far as what a man should be. You know, she didn't put up with the original stuff she encountered with me. In fact, she left me for 2 years and moved out of state. But you know, my love came back, and I did all these things while she was gone. And I dated other women, and I fought fights, and I got, you know, all that kind of stuff, and still wonders for that. But, you know, when she came back, and then we did get married, then I began to realize, well, you know, women are good. Women are good. You know, the feminine is what I was lacking, which she provided, and you know, we'd have many discussions, and she. So I think she was the big factor in the turnaround. But I still struggled with, you know, emotionally and mentally with these thoughts that would come up. And
Thank you.
But
yeah. Has anyone else learned just maybe the most from their partnerships, from their marriages, from their husbands or wives about yourself? Yeah.
And kids.
And your kids sometimes. Like, these are the people who end up being the mirrors in our lives, right? And I mean, when you're in a house with kids and partner, you're kind of in a house of mirrors, right? And you're seeing your reflection back over and over. Oh, when I'm at work, when I'm with friends, this part of me never comes out. Why doesn't that part of me come out with other people? It must be them, right? It must be my kids. They're the ones. It must be my partner. But at some point, that theory doesn't work anymore, right? And we realize, oh, this is me. This is me. And we get sick of ourselves. We get sick of that version of ourselves, the one who does that over and over. And we see at some point it just doesn't work. It's not getting me what I really want. And somehow, Thomas, you had the brilliance or the innate divine inner guidance to be attracted to a woman who wasn't going to put up with that. Well done. Good job. Because a lot of times we want to be with someone who's going to just put up with our stuff and be silent and obedient, but she was not. And you were open to change. Yeah. And you had to hit rock bottom for a little while, it sounds like.
I did. Right here. I get to the very bottom and
Well, Thomas, let's take a turn and see if there's anyone else who would be willing to share about how you have shifted how you learned how to deal with conflict in childhood into how you deal with conflict now. Anyone else on that one first topic we're on? Yeah.
The poets are emotive.
You're right. You two were our two speakers there, two readers. Yeah.
Test. Okay. Well, unfortunately, I had an extremely difficult childhood. I try not to use the word extremely very often, but that is the fact. And my mother was an intellectual heavyweight. In a serious way, she was a consultant to foreign governments. And what I learned in that household was that conflict should be resolved by making a better argument.
Sure.
By being more logically offensive to shut down the other person's way of thinking. And that never worked for me. And as I was growing away from the conditions that I was suffering from, at one point I just decided to release. And this word was very important at that time, just to release and not need to be the winner. And slowly that transitioned to the much more successful way of dealing with conflict was to hear the other person.
I love it. Thank you so much.
That's my story.
Tell me your name. Zach. Thank you, Zach. Can anyone relate to this? Does anyone have a lawyer that comes out sometimes when you're in an argument? You're like, oh, shoot, that's my inner lawyer. How are we ever going to connect with my lawyer coming out? I imagine mine kind of like pacing in front of my vulnerable, fragile Megan, just like making a case. Brilliant point. She's always right. She's always right. But it's so funny. I don't ever get what I want from it. Even if every point is brilliant and can't be refuted, I feel no more connected with that other person. We have no exchange of love when I'm a lawyer.
Sadly, I can say that I never have had that connection with my mother.
Yeah.
And this thinking and process brought me to a point where I ask people sometimes, would you rather be right or would you rather be good? I think it's a very valuable question.
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I think that defensiveness, right? So when we think about that part of us that wants to protect itself, right? And that's a beautiful urge. It's a beautiful urge to want to protect ourselves. And we all do that in different ways. Sometimes we put a fortress up and we just shut down. We tune out. Sometimes we put a fortress up and the lawyer stalks all around it, right? But we all have fortresses to protect our vulnerable inner self. And when we think about all that we've gone through in our childhood, in our teenage years, wow, did we need that? That was a really important urge. And there's still times probably we need it. But it seems like at least mine comes up way more often than I actually need it. Sometimes it comes up with people I'm very safe with. And vulnerable Megan is very safe with that person. And so how can we make sure we're living in the present and our current reality of the actual relationship that we're in right now, instead of falling on past patterns that we needed as children and teenagers? How do we shift those patterns and make sure we're in the present and we're in the current reality? Let's see if we can move the mic into the middle section now. And I'm curious. One of the things that I think Zach said that I want to challenge us on as we get into this topic of hard conversations, thank you everyone for working with the mic, is, you got the tissues, is he asked the question, do we prefer to be right or good? And I totally trust exactly what you meant by that. And I'm not challenging your intention at all. But I think for some of us and how some of us were trained, being good sometimes meant for some of us squelching our honesty. And sometimes we can still trick ourselves, right, into thinking that people can't handle our honesty. And so we should be good, as if it has to be an either or. And so as we move into this topic a little more deeply now, I'm curious, how can we live our honesty, being our honest, full selves, taking on the conflicts, taking on the hard conversations, and yet while doing that, foregrounding connection, highlighting connection as we do it. And so sometimes, well, no, I want to hear from one of you before I say more. What has someone learned on that topic? Mark, do you want to say something? Or are you just holding? Okay, thank you.
It's live.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this topic up. I realized that, I had no modeling for how to deal with conflict. I had a lot of modeling how to run from it. And what I realized is we're talking today is that, particularly my dad, he would say words like, I love your mom more than any man's ever loved a woman. And I'd swim across the ocean for her. I can remember him saying that. I can also remember time and time again coming home and there being a letter saying, I'm gone. And he'd leave for weeks, months at a time. And there was never any. So what I realized is that his words, he lived in a world where he imagined himself to be the person he wanted to be. And whatever his intention was, whatever his ideals were, he literally would live in that world. And even to this day, he'll tell you that he was the greatest husband that there ever was. When I was in my 20s, I went through a period of time where I realized how much I was like him and how much I had idealized relationships and idealized myself and was lost in not in what was present, but what I imagined and what I hoped for. And I mean, it really was a process of lots of therapy, which is why I went into psychology, because it was my own salvation, but really being in a place where not trying to be good, not trying to be that person that I thought I should be, but just okay with the rawness and the thoughts and ideas that didn't fit with who I wanted to be and who I thought I should be.
Oh, that's a really powerful story. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm really grateful for all the shares this morning. Thank you. Wow, one of the things that really strikes me about this story is the shoulds, right? When we live from a place of all the shoulds that we got from childhood and teenage years and all that, right? And then we create our own set of shoulds within ourselves. Having any gap between who we are and our shoulds can be very difficult. And there's a ton of different strategies that we use to deal with that. And one is perfectly exampled by Mark's father, right? We actually don't really see that there's much of a gap. We collapse the gap. And I think that one of the very powerful things that we can do for ourselves is recognize our shoulds, like Mark is saying, and let go of them, right? And really deal with who we really are and how we're really acting, behaving, speaking to others, right? And then doing the same for others. Letting go of our shoulds for them. And so sometimes in my little group of friends and with my daughter, we make a joke like, are you shitting on me? Did you just shit on me? To just remind ourselves that we're working on letting go of those shoulds with each other. But they creep up, don't they? We got a lot of shoulds living in us. And yet I think that, one of the interesting things is the difference between intention and impact, right? And so Mark's dad was always seeing himself based on his intentions, like how he felt on the interior, and not seeing, but with a huge blind spot, it sounds like, to his actual impact. And what I notice when I'm in conflict with someone is the first and one of the most helpful things that I can do for that person to help them get just a little more easeful is to let them know I trust their intentions. And make sure I understand their intentions and I show them, I speak to them what I think their intentions are before I name the impact. Because we all so deeply want to be understood for our intentions. And as soon as we make a mistake and we've hurt someone, we're like, but that's not my intention. My intention wasn't to do that, right? We really want them to know. And so that's one of my first things that I do. I just want to make sure that I say that a second time. Is that when I'm in conflict with someone, one of the first things I do is name and have them correct me and recorrect me that I understand their intentions. And then I differentiate between intentions and impact. Okay, so I've got your intentions right? Yes. Okay, cool. Now let's talk about what you didn't mean to do. Let's talk about the impact. Are you ready to talk about the impact now? And when we differentiate those for ourselves and for others, it makes the conversation a lot more constructive. Does that make sense? Does anyone do that? Yeah, you've done that, Zach. What's your name?
Oh, have I actually noticed
Yeah.
the difference between the two of them?
Or have you named those in a conflict?
Not quite.
Not quite. You're getting there. You seem like you're ready. You're on the cusp. Fantastic. Good. A second thing that I want to be sure to name in here is some people need to loosen up or tighten up on different things in conflict, right? So So Mark's dad, he probably needs to tighten up a little bit in terms of knowing his impact, right? And maybe even loosen up a little bit in terms of his focus on his intentions. But for most of us, I think most of us actually need to give more focus to what our intentions are and what our empathy, self-empathy needs to be. So I want to go into this final topic, and the title I'm naming it is that we are the experts on ourselves. Yeah. And we are the number one expert on ourselves. There is no one who has the tools, the history, the knowing about ourselves better than us, right? And this is a tendency that's more gender rolled for women, especially, I think. But sometimes some of us, and I know many men who do this too, give away the ability to judge us to other people. As if they're yeah, I'll say it again in just a second. Confusing. Yeah, I could probably say it in a more clear way. As if someone else's view on us is as important or accurate as our own. And we need other people. We need the house of mirrors, right? We need every mirror in the house, every child, every partner to show us who we are, right? And what our impact is, as we talked about earlier, right? Yet, when we take in those mirrors to look at our blind spots, no one in our home even can give us the empathy we need to know how amazing we are to have gotten from point A to point B of where we are today. We are the only ones who can know what our childhood dished out, what our adolescence dished out, so that we can understand how amazing we are today. Right? We're it. We're the ones. We're the only ones who can cheerlead ourselves and celebrate ourselves with the pizzazz of knowing our whole history. No one else went through what we went through. And so I think that essential for a healthy conflict where we don't go in needy for empathy, where we don't go in needy to be celebrated for where we are today, is that we're celebrating and empathizing with ourselves. Because if we approach a conflict or a conversation and we need them to empathize with us and celebrate us, because sure, we're not doing that yet, but look how far we've come. They can't do that, right? They just can't do that. They can only know how hurt they are that we haven't gone the extra inch yet. That's all they can do. That's where they are, and that's fair. But if we take that time to empathize and celebrate with ourselves, we can go in feeling like, yeah, I'm a rock star. Look where I am, and I know I can grow more. I've seen my capacity over the last 45 years. I know how far I've come. Holy shit, I've got more in store. I've got more growing ahead of me, right, Thomas? Man, look how much you've grown. Woo! From toxic masculinity to caring for your wife. Well, hold on. I want to make sure we have a woman's share because we've only had men's share so far. And it's 4 minutes till 11. Thank you. Hi, Janelle. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, thanks. So I don't know any of you. It's nice to meet you all. I'm Janelle. One of the things that strikes me is like we have a society that's built upon women not sharing. You know, be good, be small, you know, and give away your power to that man that you're talking about. For me, my mother is a therapist, and I'm a therapist. I'm second generation, and she would have this beautiful thing. She would say, "I took out all of my patience on my patients." So she would have so much anger, and there would not be enough space or room in the space for any of mine.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of smallness growing up and a lot of like retreat and running like your dad. And then over the years, as I've done a lot of therapy and a lot of my own introspection, and now that I'm in my 40s, and I teach it all day, right? You know, so it's kind of fun, but the more you have the capacity to take up space in a room, to claim space in a room, even though maybe it's not what we were taught, right? You know, the more that you have the capacity to say no, which is hard, or to even have a conflict and understand the other person's intention, but yet at the same time, simultaneously, like, ooh, didn't land. And there's still grit in that.
Nice.
Yeah. But always evolving, like you, Thomas. Always evolving, always changing.
Nice.
But it's just that opposite end of the toxic masculinity. When you have that, like you have to have that underbelly.
Nice. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I noticed that the more I drop shoulds for myself and for others, the more easily I accept no's. And I'm at the point where I'm even practicing thanking someone for their courage and vulnerability when they give me a no. And some of my friends are doing the same. And that is healing. It's so healing to be supported in giving a no. Because we're not practicing being good, right? We're practicing being our authentic, amazing selves who are so connected to our bright light that we don't need anyone else to diminish their bright light, because we can both be bright and amazing together. And we want to be in loving connection with one another, so that flow of love between me and the other person can occur. And when I put up the fortress, when I diminish my light, when I go away, all those things mean I can't be in the flow and exchange of love. And so the final thing is to just continue to come back to that being what we want in our primary relationships. That flow and exchange of love is our intention. And it doesn't have to be stopped by honesty. We don't have to run away because it can't be handled or co-created. We don't have to shut down if we're in a safe relationship. And so we can continue practicing in little micro ways, challenging ourselves to know that our present and current reality allows for us to play with something new. And we can just ask for that permission. Could I play with this right now? Could I play with who I am with you right now? I want to try something new. It might be awkward, but could we do this really slowly together? And I want to do this for the sake of our shared loving connection, so that I don't run from it or squelch it. Well, I am so grateful once again for this courageous group. Thank you for sharing. It's really sweet to hear your powerful stories, your vulnerability. And I wish that in these next month, the next weeks, this next month of holidays with our houses of mirrors, from family to extended family, that you can find your own bright, inner light, amazing self, and just keep playing with her or him, being as bright and honest and authentic as you can be. Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome. We need it. We need it because it's good stuff. Cold is the morning and long is the night. Warm are our hearts as the sun shines light. Sing, everybody, sing in your gladness, that Advent pleasures banish your sadness. Love, joy, and peace to you. Peace and goodwill is my message for you. Great be your joys, may your sorrows be few. Sing, everybody, sing in your gladness, that Advent pleasures banish your sadness. Love, joy, and peace to you. Warm in your fire glowing, keep it going so bright. Soon a day of solstice will bring back the light. Sing, everybody, sing in your gladness, that Advent pleasures banish your sadness. Love, joy, and peace to you. A little Advent ditty for you. And we're gonna sing a song. Now there is love on earth, and it has begun with me. Now there is love on earth, love that was meant to be. With all our relations, loved ones all are we. Now I walk with my family in perfect harmony. Love has begun with me, and this is the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joy and smile. To take each moment and each moment in love eternally. Now there is love on earth, and it has begun with me. We are the light, the love, and the presence. Wherever we are, love is, and all is well. Thank you for being here. Nearby Stars here next Sunday. There is food up in the kitchen for you if you're hungry. Just want to hang out a little bit. Please do. Thank you all for being here. Mwah, mwah, mwah.